care of. The first is that we have apologies for absence. Member Don Stewart Terrelong and Miss Daly would be late. Are there any other apologies? We'd like to acknowledge in the gallery the Black River Primary School who are here with us overseeing the Parliament today. So could we welcome them? Thank you. Just in matters of housekeeping, I'd like to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on June the 12th. That's the only outstanding one we have for confirmation. So, any corrections? Can I have somebody move for the confirmation? Member Campbell, Member Jackson. Yes. Members, item 8, we have a number of outstanding draft reports. They have gone out multiple times to the members, and I would just ask that we confirm them so they can be tabled in the House. We have the deliberations on the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sports. Which was the issue? I didn't want to do that.
Sports. We had anti-doping and all of that.
Yes.
Sport.
Right. The deliberations with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. That was with the universities with the deregistration of students. The deliberations of the Ministry of Economic Growth. The National Security, Justice and Transport, Ministry of Finance and Public Service. We had brought them all together, read the outstanding tickets, and the review of the central budget, which we had done earlier. And of course, we have the annual report for the year 18-19. Are there any corrections, or can we take those reports as they are and table them in Parliament? Yes? So could someone move for the confirmation, adoption of the reports?
No, I was just checking if there's anything outstanding in relation to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
Weren't we supposed to take them up?
Yes, they're to appear next week, and there are 2 entities to come.
We had not completed our deliberations with them. They were to have come, and the PS had to go away, and so we are to see them next week. So we'll do their report as well.
Yeah.
All right. So can we move for the adoption? So moved. All right. The clerk, there were some other things that we had determined. We were going to look at the TRN, the grouping for some. We had some persons who had wanted to come before us. Yeah, TCC, that sort of thing. All right. Members, there are some outstanding matters to be brought before us. The matter of the tax compliance certificate, sort of issues of efficiency. We had, along the line, we have done them. I'm going to ask the secretary to the committee to give us those, give us a list of those. I expect Parliament will prorogue in a matter of weeks, probably 2. Sorry, not prorogue, on break. And we expect we'll probably go on break the last week or final week in July. That would leave us with 2 or 3 weeks, Wednesdays. I'm going to send out this week for us to ensure what we intend to do for the 3 weeks before we go on break, so that we can tidy up what is outstanding. So, yes, I know some of it, but we have to. All right. So, with that, members, there's one other issue that I would like before we invite the persons in today. There's a matter which had gone out to all members. we had, over a few weeks ago, we had taken Edna Manley along with the Ministry of Education. In that process, when we saw them, the issue came up of the matter that they're dealing with at Edna Manley now with regards to a case, alleged case of sexual harassment at Edna Manley. Subsequent to that, the committee was informed that a number of persons affiliated with Edna Manley, including the young student who was at the center, indicated that they would have liked to have come to our committee and address the committee on matters with regard to Edna Manley. I sent out to the committee the request for it, and I had indicated to them that we were not going to try any case here in the Parliament. There was a place for that. It wasn't ours to try any cases, but that this was the People's Parliament, and if there were matters of a general nature, especially with regard to problems at Edna Manley and problems in general with this matter of sexual harassment, which is something that we as a country have to ensure that our policies and programs in all our institutions are such that it protects our young ladies and ladies in general. Young people in general, absolutely. The request went out to the members, and this request was denied by the members of the committee. And I would say that from my perspective, I was quite disappointed myself. I've always believed that this Parliament should be one where we practice the greatest openness and transparency and really try and search for truth, and that people must feel it's their Parliament. There is a cynicism in Jamaica that they feel we cover up everything, and I feel that the more we open it up, the better it would be. So I was disappointed. Nonetheless, the committee had indicated that, and I think it is important for us to have a discussion of how we proceed along that line. Nonetheless, today in the gallery we have a number of persons, and I'd like to recognize them and welcome them to their Parliament. Among them is Professor Malua Williams Myers, who is a former associate of the Edna Manley School. You can, yes. We have Janelle Blair, who is a student at Edna Manley School, who has been at the center of this incident. And I would just like to say that I would like, on behalf of this committee, whatever way we took it, that I'd like to commend her for her remarkable bravery in not only confronting the issue there, but for being willing to come forward and discuss it publicly. If we had more young people showing this level of bravery, this problem would be easier to tackle. I would like to also welcome Lloyd Grant and Morgan Phillip, who are both here representing the Jamaicans for Justice. So I'd like us to just acknowledge all of them and thank them for coming to the Parliament today. So members, with that, I turn it over. I'm sure members would like to say something. I have Yeah, well, we'll all have a chance. I have Member Jackson, as you understand, then Member Campbell. Member Paul, I see raised. I will take it as Member Jackson.
I was attempting to intervene during your opening remarks when you made reference to the members of the committee, and I would want the record to reflect that is not the members, but some members of the committee, because I indicated that I would want the persons to appear before this committee. And I want to enjoin you, Mr. Chairman, in emphasizing the point that it is unfortunate that the Parliament of the people is denying the people to come and posit their concerns. In respect of crime and violence, which is one of the most overwhelming problems facing the country, the big complaint that the police make is persons willing to come forward and share their experiences that they can act. Many persons are reluctant to come forward. And now we have some Jamaicans who know of or have information about issues affecting important institutions in this country and colleague members of this committee, in much the same way that in another committee, the Internal and Affairs Committee, when we sought to have detainees or former detainees in the state of emergency in St. James appear before that committee to share with the members and the country what their experiences have been. The government members voted and used their majority to deny those former detainees to come before their parliament and speak to their representatives. And in this occasion, I see a similar thing happening where we are shutting down the people from speaking to their parliament on issues affecting them. Mr. Chairman, it is unfortunate, and I feel terrible that I'm a part of a parliament that is indulging in that practice.
Member Campbell.
Chairman, we have this unfortunate habit of going against the very rules that we set. I have before me an agenda. And I perhaps I could be guided as to where the issue that we're presently discussing appears. I don't see it appearing on the agenda.
All right, Member Campbell.
But
no, I'm going to answer you clearly. No, you had asked a question.
Yeah, if you would just guide me as to where it appears.
Absolutely. As I indicated when I started the meeting, I've gone through and cleared up our matters of housekeeping. And now under my opening remarks, I'm making the point that today, before we ask Edna Manley to come in, and the Ministry of Education, I'm clearing up these procedural issues of what took place leading up to this. This is something that happened yesterday in Parliament. This went around, and I noticed Member Campbell is on this list. You also disagreed yesterday with this.
Yes, and
so therefore it's a matter. So you can address that, so you can go ahead and address it.
It is a matter.
Absolutely.
Very well. Thank you very much. And I made a decision against the background that we're not embarking upon a trial of the issues. On the last occasion, when the principal, or whomever she's described as, for Edna Manley, appeared before this committee, certain questions were put to her, and it was established that she, based on what she said, that certain procedures were not followed. I am not of the view that the appearance of one of the students involved in that matter of 2017 would take the matter any further. because we are not embarking on our trial. And particularly in circumstances when the alleged offender will not have an opportunity, and there's no contemplation of bringing the alleged offender before this committee, I didn't see the point in taking, and in an event, we have this young person who is going to be further put in the public's view and perhaps ridiculed and chastised in the public domain in furtherance of what I don't know. I don't know what it is that we intend to achieve when we, having had all the information that the institution itself had breached its own rules. I don't know how much further we could go with it. And against the background for the protection of the individuals involved, both sides. If we want to say we, tell the institution to go on because there's no limit on the time, go back and do what you have to do, yes, but certainly not try the matter here. We can do that. Say to Edna Manley, go follow the procedures, which the ministry, the PS was here, and the PS, yes, admitted that there were failures. Well, go back, instruct Edna Manley to go and follow the procedures involved and let the chips fall where they may. But it's not our remit to conduct a trial of those issues. Certainly would be prejudicial.
Please, no, please allow him to finish and afterwards. Let us.
Simple point of order, Mr. Chairman. I understand from the communication that the student is the one who requested to be here. The committee never invited the person; they requested. It does not matter. I just want to that it was a request to which we were responding.
Just to answer the 2 points you made, Member Campbell, and as I said, these decisions were not taken lightly. Number one, in terms of it being a trial of issues, I was very clear, and one of the things that I maintain for both sides, we're not trying cases here. What we do is to determine the matters that may arise under the sort of government, its ministries, departments, and agencies, and how we deal with policy with regard to them. So where we are able to find the problems and determine what are real problems, it allows us to make those judgments in correct form. So I was very clear, and I made the point today again that no instant case was going to be discussed here. So therefore it was not a trial by any stretch of the imagination. Secondly, this was something that was requested, and I would say that it took great bravery to do so, and I think that it is something that we should commend. And the point I'm making is it also goes to show the commitment and the fact that they feel that it is so important to unearth these problems that we may have. And I strongly believe that it is our duty as people's representatives to listen, and listen keenly to what persons are saying on the ground. Hence my disappointment for yesterday. But I just think it was just for me to clarify what my position was. I will take each person. After Member Campbell, I have Member Paulwell. I now have an indication from Member Clark. Member Whittle.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was preempting Member Campbell because I thought he was going to argue that this wouldn't fall within the remit of the PAC, but I understand from him that that is not the argument, so I don't need to go there. All I will say is that I think we have enough lawyers inside this committee that if we hear from a member of the public and we see that there might be any breaches that are imminent in what is being said, we would, of course, steer such a person away from that. And I think Member Campbell has helped in the past to ensure that we are not in violation of the rule of law or committing any injustice on our part. So I don't think there's much to be feared by allowing persons to come to speak to us. We, I think, have sufficient experience not to go down certain paths. So I voted in favor of hearing from the persons.
Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I've been here on this committee, Mr. Chairman, I've seen where we have sought to bring persons here. And as you rightly say, we are not here to try a case. But I've seen on many occasions, Mr. Chairman, certain members of the PAC and the PAAC, that's what they come here to do, is to try a case as if you are before the court and you have one member at one point asking 12 questions on a trot and even go the distance of accusing the technocrats that come here or the persons who come here to give us information, Mr. Chairman. And what it is, Mr. Chairman, is that we must be so inclined to guide persons. We're not saying that they are not supposed to come forward and give information, but there is a procedure, Mr. Chairman, and rightly so. If that situation that we are told has happened, then therefore there is a process that the institution must take. And if it becomes a situation that it is against the law, then they must also advise that a case against the perpetrator be taken out in the court. At that time, we can...
Member Clark, I would say to you that a lot of these things are a matter of judgment. But one of the issues that we must be willing to do as a committee of parliament is to listen. I'm sure you have heard of the ostrich syndrome. And the fact of the matter is we can bury our heads in the sand and not listen and look for the problems that actually exist out there. The truth is that our constituents, the people who send us here, that is what they want from us. And I'm simply saying that within the rules, I believe that our determination should always be towards openness, to a level of transparency, to seeking the truth, but that we do it in a manner that we don't use this chamber and the protections it gives us to injure others. And I'm very careful about how I manage that on both sides. But I believe that we must, as a committee, allow for the information to reach us. And I'm disappointed, as I said before, that in a case like this, we were not willing to listen to the two sides of the coin. Member
Yes.
Witter, yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I do understand your concern, but I want to support the view of Member Campbell, because you mentioned that you wouldn't want any instant case to be discussed here. You made that point in your preface, that you wouldn't want any instant case to be discussed here. And therefore, I believe that inviting this person to the committee is a clear case of seeming to discuss an instant case. As Member Campbell said, if you invite one and don't invite the other, then it would seem to be unfair to the person who is being accused for not being given a chance to express his view. And therefore, I believe that at this point, wouldn't be appropriate to have one person coming in to address the parliament and not giving the other a chance. And if you bring both, then you run the risk of it being looked at as a trial here, and that's what we are running from. That is what we are trying to avoid. And therefore, I believe that at this point, we should allow the investigation that is taking place at the institution to run its course, and then coming out of that, we make a determination as to whether we invite the accused and the person who is damaged.
At the risk of repetition, let me again, because I understand you're responding, but I've got to respond to that as well. Number one, I was very clear that we would not allow for the trying of any cases here. It was made very clear to all, and I've made it on both sides. That's number one. Number two, Edna Manley is here as an institution and are speaking to the matters from their perspective at this point. So there is the argument, your very argument could be used, that we do have to hear the wider picture. So I simply make the point that it's something that we as a committee must manage. But again, we have to err on the side of openness. Member Phillips, I have Member Dalrymple. And then
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just want to start out by saying I do agree that the young lady's approach to coming to speak is something that is commendable, because I start from a standpoint of saying that too many of our Jamaican men, and I'm speaking about this country now, well placed in their suits and their jackets and their ties, have this type of behavior permeating through the society, and it should not be condoned. However, I lean to the fact that if the young lady comes, it is never fair for us to have her side without the person who is being accused having an opportunity to defend himself.
That would be so if we were dealing with an instant case.
Yes,
Remember that. So please,
yes.
let us not
go
down that.
But Chairman, if you will allow me, there is no way a young girl who feels so strongly about a situation that she would want to come and share with us, because she was obviously traumatized and she feels strongly and committed to share. There is no way she's going to come and not stir up a lot of emotions. And we know there is another person who is being accused of it, and there is no way, it's not a matter of trying a particular case, but at her age, the trauma that she has obviously experienced is going to come out. And therefore, you leave the person who is being accused without an opportunity of being heard and his own situation. You cannot, it is not practical to think that at her age, the trauma, she's going to come and it is not going to be focused on what happened to her at the incident. So I want to support the fact that she came out. I want to congratulate her, because I do not believe at all that this type of behavior should be cloaked in any way. The men in our society do it. I don't care where they come from or what positions they have. They ought to be exposed. But I am very careful, as my parliamentarian and counsel said, and an attorney, that, you know, you get this view from her, and at her age, and the gentleman, the person who is accused, doesn't have an opportunity for his say. That is the level of fairness. But I want to congratulate her, and yes, we need to hear as a country because we need to stamp it out. It's happening in first world countries, and we need to take a step here too, because you know they say if the Americans sneeze, we get a cold. Somehow they're doing it in the States. They're attacking you at all levels. So we should have no fear of doing it here. But I just don't think that it's a level playing field to operate with her without the gentleman being here.
Member Phillips?
Chairman, I think as the people's representative, and as was stated before, that the two individuals wrote to the committee, wanted to be heard. And as elected representatives who should listen to the people, that is why we're here. I would make a suggestion, Chairman, because I feel strongly that both individuals want to say something and need to say something. I make a suggestion, Chairman, that we hear them in camera and make a determination after that. But I think they ought to be heard by us, the committee itself. Because if it is that they didn't want to say something, they wouldn't have written to the committee. So I'm making that suggestion, Chairman, for the members of the committee to at least hear them in camera and make a determination on the way forward.
Well, Member Phillips has posited a position. We do have the institutions outside. The question is whether or not we would do today. Another position, Member Phillips, could be that we ask them if they have...
This, the burden where it ought to lie. Not be so focused on this individual. The person, the main person in this theater is the head of Edna Manley, and she has admitted certain things, and there are other things which I intend to pursue. So I don't know that if some wise man can say to me, this is what we will achieve in pursuing the line that my friend is going down, then I certainly would. But the issue of fairness, I can't overemphasize it. And I know my friends from Jamaicans for Justice will agree.
You're taking a wide assumption.
Oh, well, because I know they deal in fairness.
That the justice.
It's
that they would give you justice.
It's part of their trade. It's part of their trade. They like fairness.
Okay. I want to point about that, Chairman, because I feel strongly too that we will be failing this young lady to not at least give her the opportunity. She wrote to the committee. She wrote to her parliament asking us as the people's representatives to hear her voice.
Almost on knee.
So I mean, I understand. I understand where you're going, and that is why I'm saying let us listen to her in camera, so that at least we can hear what it is that she wants to say to us.
She wants not to prosecute.
No, man. Just relax, man. Relax.
No, members,
relax.
Please. Both
relax.
of you.
Chairman.
Members, 1 second. Member Phillips.
That's where it ought to start.
Chairman. This member here had the head of Edna Manley like a trial the last time, and that's fine by me. That's fine by me. But I feel it is unjust to this young lady, as the parliamentarians elected by the people who wrote. Be quiet. Who wrote? I'm not taking it back either.
Members,
can we
have
to the
one
parliament
at a time,
chairman?
please?
No, man. Give her that voice.
All right. Members, Member Campbell. Member Campbell, just to say that again, I just want to repeat again for the fourth time, it was never the case of trying instant problem. It was a wider issue, and I think the perspective that wants to be brought is basically the problem that's faced in a general sense. So that's point number one. I just want to say, Member Dalrymple, you made the point about sexual harassment and went on to say men in society who do that. I think that as policymakers, sexual harassment by whomever to whomever is wrong, and that is why the policy, and I don't think that we should take gender as because it can be in different ways. The third thing I would say, members, is that this is an issue which causes an even greater concern because it goes to the rules of the committee. And members here know that I will be passing a member's motion in Parliament. But one of the issues is that it is, I think, even greater of the committee says that the committee shall set the agenda. So when the chairman indicates certain things. So what you have in instant case of 15 members, yesterday when it was sent around, members Clark, member Brown, member Dalrymple, Holness, Campbell, Witter, and Dunn. 8 members voted against hearing this young lady. So that's 8 of the 15.
I would ask you to use language which is more appropriate in the circumstances.
Sorry.
There was no vote against this young lady.
No, attending. Attending.
I beg your pardon?
Okay. The question asked on the letter was kindly indicate whether you agree that they should be in attendance. The answers were agree and disagree. You put disagree. As far as I'm concerned, that is synonymous with vote against. No, that's a different question.
Semantics.
Yeah. But members, all right, so members, the last, so members, we have 2 things in front of us. We have 2 things in front of us, members. Number one, whether or not we should hear her in camera, and if we should, would it be today or at another meeting? And secondly, whether or not it should be by statement. I'd like to, or not at all. I think we should start there, whether or not it is still felt that it should not, that she should not be heard.
I just make a humble appeal to my colleagues, a humble appeal, that let us not deny this young lady or any other person who has an experience that they believe we should hear. We have the practice of dealing with how to deal with sensitive matters. As my colleague from East Kingston said earlier on, if the discussion in the open committee is going down a certain line, we can suspend it and we can go in camera and hear to protect the person or persons that might be affected in any sensitive way. But for heaven's sake, colleagues, I beg of you, don't let the records be made that we as a committee denying a Jamaican from speaking to their parliamentary representative on a matter that affects them. Such persons can make the request to come.
Members,
Why are you not advocating? Why are you not advocating for the other? There are 2 persons involved. So why are you not advocating for both?
Members, yes. I think we have.
Yes.
So members, I think we have.
What happened to
I
the
think
next
we have
gentleman?
had sufficient discussion. I think the first question I would ask members, is it the considered opinion that we should, whether we should hear from her or not? Do you hold the position? Well, I think the first question is whether we should hear or not.
No, but we have taken a decision already, Mr. Chair. And you
Yes,
have it
but
there
I would
with you.
like, yes.
So I don't think we need to go any further. We have the decision there. It is there. And we are standing by it.
But understood. But I do
standing
believe
by it.
you're standing by it. Those who disagree with it, just raise your hands. And I take it Member Campbell's position was said quite vociferously. I'm willing to.
Mr.
I
Chair,
think the question,
it is in writing.
Chairman,
It is in writing.
I think the question, Chairman, is having taken a decision in relation to
Yesterday,
the open
whether
hearing.
there's a review of the decision.
Well, I think the question is whether those members who had disagreed with the open hearing will now agree to a private
a closed hearing. Yeah. Or a statement. Okay. So members, would you agree to a in camera?
Mr. Chair, is what do we do? No. What do we do in relation to the accused person? That needs to be clear. That needs to be clear before we can take a decision as to whether or not. Yes, that's my opinion. I need to hear from all of us. What are we going to do in relation to the accused person?
No, there's a major difference in that someone has asked to come. The other person has not, and I would not be in a position to ask or to subpoena someone else. So what I can only deal with is what is in front of me now, and the decision can only be based on that. So the simple question, and I don't think we need to belabor it all day. If members feel that the answer should be no, let's say no, move on, and if they agree to it.
Chairman, I think there's a majority, based on my own sense, of members who will afford the in-camera hearing, based on what I'm sensing, and perhaps we could schedule that.
But that sense could be very similar to Member Campbell's
No,
sense of the Jamaicans
I've
for
consulted.
justice.
I have consulted.
So members,
I have consulted.
Could I ask our members in agreement with the in-camera hearing? Or those that are against? No, we just... All right. So members, will we do that today, before or after we have or do we put it off till the next meeting? Members, please, I'm guided.
Chair, since we have the ministry outside, can we schedule it for next week, if possible, if members will ask her if it is possible for her to come next week, and the other person who wrote to the committee. If that is workable, Chair, I'll ask you to put it to.
Well, if they are able to do that, I will communicate. I'm sure they're hearing. I see nods of assent.
Can we ask the clerk of the committee to at least have a discussion to see if that is possible?
Could you do? Well, I'm seeing nods of assent. So if that's the case, members, we will see them in camera next week to have this discussion. All right. Okay. Thank you, members. I'm pleased that we have at least made that step. And let me just in closing this session, I think, having heard the discussions from all my members, let me just say to Ms. Blair that we commend her for her strength and bravery, in forthrightness in coming out to air this issue in public. It must be very difficult for her, and I think that we, the members of this committee must commend her and thank her for doing it. Absolutely. All right. So, member, could we? All right. So, members, we have a review of. This.
Sir, are those my documents again?
I don't know.
Figure out
Oh,
that
yeah.
this is
No,
not-
you can take this. I don't need it.
Hmm?
All right. Yes, how are you? Yes, welcome to your team from the Ministry of Education. Uh, we're hoping some members here have, as member of parliament, they have graduations, as you would understand, and some have graduations that are even more personal of nature, and I have indicated certainly to one member that at midday sharp, I shall eject him from the chamber. You know, in those famous words, I will tell him to pack his bags and go. But from the chamber temporarily. But as we're going to just try and go through quickly. There are two issues on the agenda.
We should have indicated that we had an extended session earlier before getting to this point, and so a later start.
Yes.
The proceedings.
Yes. Oh, let me apologize. The committee had some matters debating. So, so let me apologize on our behalf for the late entry. You know, hence my zeal in trying to get us to move as quickly as we can today. So, members, I think we have two issues. One is the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts, and the second is the Caribbean Maritime Institute. The one, I think both had, sorry. My profound apologies, Professor. Caribbean Maritime University. So we have a report here. I suggest we take the report and then we will move quickly and just deal with the outstanding matters of the Edna Manley. Members, there is an issue because PEP, there was a discussion that we would take PEP and have a discussion about it. However, there was a long, fulsome discussion in Parliament yesterday. I, for one, feel that there's some information that is to come out later that it would largely be rehashing a debate that was held in our fulsome house. So I don't know if members agree with me that we, although we had asked the Permanent Secretary to come prepared, that we can certainly, at this point, either delay, postpone, or basically take it off the agenda unless or until something else arrives. So I would seek your guidance. Yes.
I would humbly ask that we take it off the minutes until or if something else arrives,
yes.
Because the minister with responsibility for that ministry did do justice to it yesterday. I don't think there's anything more that the permanent secretary could add to it today, because he went way down into the meat of it and to bring out, to hash out how successful the exam was by the many students who got the first place.
You might get caught in the slips if you continue, but certainly it certainly was a lengthy presentation yesterday. So the members agree. So we will deal with those two matters, and members, if those two matters are concluded, are we then saying we would not necessarily call the Ministry of Education back? In other words, we are hoping to conclude today. I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that. Yes. So, is there any particular order that we will take them in, or? So let's follow this. The Caribbean Maritime Institute is first on the agenda. There's a university. Yeah, it's a years of repetition. Takes a while to all right, so members, there's a report here along with the responses. I think many of these were from members Paulwell and Phillips. So Member Paulwell, you'd like to proceed?
Well, just two questions. The last time you were here, sir, you had spoken about harassment in relation to the agency that was pursuing investigation. I gather that all the materials have now been, relevant materials have now been turned over to the agency, and there is nothing outstanding. And that, am I hearing right that there is a process continuing to deal with the so-called harassment?
No, sir.
Nothing
no
in court?
No.
Nothing in court?
No, there was a matter for the procedure that was taken to court.
Yes.
Because, but that is now under review for.
No, I need to be clear. Is the matter still subsisting in court? Are you still taking that matter through the courts? I gather that a date has been set.
A date has been set, but there may not be a need for that, sir.
So you're trying to negotiate out of court?
It's not a matter of negotiation. It's a matter that some procedures were not followed. Yes.
No, Member Jackson, please allow him to finish.
Yes. Yes, because I wanted to go on to the checks. So if Member Jackson wishes to pursue this point, sure.
Chairman, I'm not clear, Professor. The legal action was taken out in respect to the request by the FID, right?
The request, sir, it was taken out because of the process that was not followed. Because we were issued a court order to obtain information for which 90% of the information already with them. And then a court order was issued, member MP, as a lawyer, without the proper procedures in terms of affidavit. There was no affidavit. An affidavit was filed on the morning of the court, which is not proper.
But Chairman, I'm not a lawyer. But if the action taken was towards getting the documents have already been submitted. Isn't the thing over? And if that is the case, why is it then that it is continued? Lawyers here can advise me. If the matter is settled, the court is notified that the matter is no longer of value and it dies there. Because my next question is, the continuing legal action, doesn't that incur legal costs at the taxpayer's expense? Because we were told the last time that the CMU is paying the lawyer. And I'd like to know, what are the legal charges that we are incurring for this matter as the guardian of taxpayers' money?
Yes, Professor, I have a sympathy for the question. Basically, if all the information is in, no matter what the procedure otherwise, why would we pursue a court case at this point?
Sir, I said
you are
that,
saying this under consideration.
that's correct, sir.
Well, I think maybe you could have said it a little more strongly, such as we intend to discontinue. That would no, but that would have resolved all the problem, Member Campbell.
It was not the CMU which initiated
The court action.
Oh,
it was initiated by FID.
And they seek a
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. That is correct.
The action was initiated by FID, and it's in pursuance
of that.
oh,
The
well,
CMU is saying what you did was incorrectly done. So let us just leave it there. And those two bodies, state bodies, can
No, but that's
Well-
straightforward.
well, we have
Chair,
four lawyers.
Just for clarity, Chair. Just for clarity.
Member.
Because Professor Pinnock has stated that 90% of the documents went before. What would have been different with the procedure with those 90% and the final 10%? Why FID had to go to court?
Sir, there was no need to go to court because, in fact, the days after, all the documents were with them.
No, but
you only go to court if you cannot get information. So I'm saying that there must have been some other motives that were not expressed.
that still don't make any sense, Chair, but I guess
All right,
the
Member
explanation-
Paul, right?
Yes, so I had wanted to move on to the checks that were made payable to Ms. Miller. I am seeing, Professor, that on these invoices, requests were made by Ms. Campbell for the checks to be paid to Ms. Miller. I know you would have done your due diligence in relation to Ms. Campbell, because in this day and age of greater scrutiny by the financial sector on transactions, I think everybody who makes payments has a responsibility to ensure that it is properly made and it's not going to be used for purposes other than for which you intend. Did you do any due diligence in relation to Ms. Miller? Because you're writing a check from your institution to her. Would you have done any due diligence to ensure that this is not a drug dealer, for example?
Well, we were not aware of Ms. Miller. What we did due diligence on is Ms. Gail Campbell, who we had a contract with. And on her invoice, she specifically requested that some payments were made in Jamaican dollar because she was not here to this part.
And that's why I would really like the PS to say whether that or not that is a correct procedure for an institution to do. Would the Ministry of Education do that?
Well, my principal financial officer is here, sir, but based on the systems at the ministry, we do not usually honor a third party in this way. So the payment is usually linked to the person's TRN number, which goes onto the system. And of course, as we are aware, all payments go through the accountant general. So the TRN is what actually linked the payment, sir. So we would not, the system would not allow for a third party payment.
I think, Chairman, that has to be a recommendation from this committee in terms of process. I think it's important that you know who you're dealing with and that it can't be a whimsical request for a third party to be paid in circumstances where you really don't know the background of the third party.
Member Phillips?
Thank you, Chair. The CAPIAS program, Professor Pinnock, how many, if you are able to tell, because I've been going through this document that was sent to us, the report itself. It shows duration of some of the programs or the period January 7th to 10th, 2019. But the true essence of what is being tried to achieve through the program itself, because some of them seem to be very short-term programs, and you have shown where they go, they're administered at various different locations. And I'd asked a question at the last sitting that we were at, if we could have gotten an idea of how many students from this eventually would matriculate over into the CMU itself from the CAPIAS. And are we really meeting what we had set out for this CAPIAS program? And how long have this program been in existence? Because from this document here, there seemed to be a gap also in the administration of the program. But then I also asked a question about the consultant and if we are getting value for money. A question, you can go ahead and answer those, and then I will then ask further questions.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, Member Phillips. This is the Service Learning Initiative. What we are finding, we are serving a sector, which is the shipping and logistics sector. And you have many jobs, and there are new skill sets that are there. And some of the jobs do not require a degree. But our mandate from our act is to actually take people from where they are to where they're supposed to be. And this is how we perceive it. So this specific intervention was aimed against many of the participants who were prime candidates for gangs. So we went in hardcore communities and actually administered this program. It was the first. It had a 45% completion rate, which was less than what we had anticipated. But the factors leading to this, because there are two main holding factors. One was food, and the other was a stipend. And in many of these communities, without a stipend, you cannot get much, because this is what would send them out as one of the incentives, because many of them already have extended families, they have children to look after. So you have to give them something that will lure them away from the significance of gangs. So for this program, it was only food, so it came up short, right? So we did not have, so this was one of the failures of this part, where we had only a 45% completion. This was part of this.
Because the stipend for transport was not provided.
Stipend was not provided. That's correct, sir.
Didn't get the budget for it, or?
No, sir. We never have the, because it was we participated. We were partner in this program. So like the others that are done directly through the Ministry of Education and Heart. Mm-hmm. This was what the importance. If you look at the other outputs that we have, the stipend, you see a greater return. But again, the target market for this was those hardcore people that we wanted to capture. So I still believe that at a 45% completion rate, we did get some significant results.
And the description that Professor gave, I welcome, Professor, the whole idea of unattached youths that are prone to engage in gang activities. The surveys done in terms of those who are recruited into gangs have a clear profile of the social environment that these youngsters are in, and go down into communities that are I use Dr. Herbert Gale's work as one such reference. my point or my concern, Chairman, is if this program is targeting those such youth, what are the instrument and the institution used to identify, rather than just a community, rather than the particular individuals that are vulnerable? You know, Spanish Town, can just pick a place randomly, or St. James, that's random. But there are particular communities, there are particular families, and so on, where these young people are, that we need to target, so we don't go in a sort of net fishing approach, and we might catch 2 out of 10 that we pick that would be in it, rather than find 10 that we really need to get in the program. So I'm really concerned about what are the instruments used, what mechanisms are used to identify the participation in this program, if it is as you are describing it, to stem the flow of youngsters into gangs and other such deviant behaviors.
Yes, okay, and you're correct. I very much agree with you that the net fishing approach cannot work. And what you just described, MP, is very, very, very significant, because what we need is a multi-stakeholder approach. And in fact, this is a mechanism that I think the Ministry of Education have done, they have put together very well, that with the various grouping across the island, because in fact, when we work with other programs, such as we have a cadet program that we work inside the school, and they are able to identify the at-risk youth to give us from within the system. Hard Trust is now doing a far better job in terms of scoping the island. So I think we are very much there, sir. So we have more informed approach how to work. You're correct.
To do with the administering of the program, you gave us a brief of the consulting services that was used for the CAP program. Was this put out to tender?
It wasn't a consulting service, it was a partnership. And what we did, we provided, as I said here, we provided the nutritional support. A partnership would see our partner delivering the program. What we did, we provided the curriculum, the nutrition support, and part awards, a joint certification at the end. So that was our contribution.
Right, and
so there was no payment.
And you would have done a valuation of the services provided by this company, Optimum, to see if we are getting value for money?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and are we happy with the services?
So far we are, sir, because we have done other programs with them, and this is how, because we have been partnering with them, they have been delivering quite well. So the catering services that are being provided for the students on a daily basis for meal is done through Optimum, or these individuals are paid through CMU? Optimum actually did the arrangements, but CMU paid directly to the caterers. That was what happened.
Is one of your caterers Maureen Blake?
That's correct.
And another one, Kim Brown Lawrence?
That's correct.
Is Kim Brown Lawrence, is it the same Kim Brown Lawrence that is the counselor for the Brownstown division?
Yes, sir.
Yeah?
Yes.
And this contract would have been entered into through Optimum?
Yes,
and
sir.
is being paid, as you said,
yes,
through.
Sir. Yes.
All right. So, how are we? And the Maureen Blake, is this the same person that is being paid through the ministry as a household helper also for the former minister? P.S., are you able to tell us?
Well, I don't have the full information here, sir, but I believe in the early stages of 2016, there was a Maureen Blake that was employed through the ministry as the helper. I am not able to say, however, if she continued throughout the process until the minister left. But I can find that information and provide it, sir.
Please.
But I know the documents show that she started in 2016.
And yes. And again, Chairman, the more that we get information on this, is the untidy nature of, and that's why I ask you,
The more you get the side information.
why I ask you, Prof, if we are getting value for money from, this is it?
No,
Oh, this, you got this last week.
no,
I'm not asking. You don't read, so you wouldn't know.
no, I didn't get it.
So, and it's why I ask you, Chair, through your chair too, if we are actually getting value for money, because to see persons so closely connected to the minister being employed through too many of the programs through the CMU raises red flags, and hence what.
In other words, how did these persons come to be employed?
I said the partner actually, they were the ones who organized the program, and what we did was we paid for the meals. The meals were delivered.
So who organized that?
It was the partner, the company, Optimum.
That employ these individuals.
Would have made provisions and organized them.
Where's Optimum based?
This is in Ocherius.
In St. Anne also.
Yeah.
Chair, I would say I'm hoping that this program is also a part of the remit of the Auditor General for her to at least see if, because in his own words, the professor said that they had not met what they wanted to. I think 45% of those who registered actually completed the course. And if we're spending millions of dollars like this and seeing the close connection, and I would love to see if these contracts were even put out to tender for other persons. But seeing that the minister was the candidate for Northwest St. Anne, and these individuals are so closely connected either to his household or because this is a second such helper who have been employed by the minister, who is being paid through the CMU itself.
And the same person is the
Unfortunate.
And the counselor herself.
So the helper is the counselor?
No.
No, it's a different one. The counselor is one, the helper is another.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to move on from this to another.
Yes, please. Well,
the CMU.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I wanted to go back to the issue of Mr. Balfour Peart. And I want to, from you, Prof. Pinnock, the relationship, you said previously that he's a partner of CMU. Some of the activities, hence why being titled a partner, and some of because monies were paid back to him. He's the same individual that contacted you, read a party for the former minister. And money is being paid back to Mr. Peart himself. In your own words, what is the relationship between the CMU and Mr. Peart exactly?
Mr. Peart is also a past student. He did a master's. He owns a major logistics company in South Florida, and he supports CMU in many ways. So we draw on his expertise from time to time.
So is it, and how long now has he been assisting the CMU in a way that you have described previously?
This goes back to about at least 2015.
2015, all right?
The support or student?
No, his partnership with the CMU.
No, he said he did his master's there. Was the 2015 is when he did his master's or when the other relationships commence?
Yeah, he would have completed his master somewhere around 2017, I think, 2017 or 2018, somewhere around.
The relationship to which you referred when he
Went,
started
went
as a
beyond
student.
that. We went before that. He actually, as I said, he owns a major logistics company in South Florida. So he supports our students with internships. He, has been there to support the university.
No, I just want to get some chronology, Professor. You mentioned the 2015. What started in 2015?
He'd have started by supporting students in internships, providing them jobs in Florida and so on. He would have
Before he became a student.
That's correct.
And then in 2017, thereabout, that's when he became a student.
It could have been about 2016, 2017. I don't remember I don't have the dates with me now.
Okay, so his relationship was from the support he was giving to students coming there before
That's
becoming
correct.
a student himself.
That's correct. That's correct.
You previously had
Member Phillips, 1 second, please. Member Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Member Clark, his daughter is graduating today, and I'm not allowing him to be late for the function. Congratulations, son, and wish her the best from all of us. Travel safe, Member Clark.
Yes.
Continue, Member Phillips.
Yeah. So previously, Prof, you had stated that Mr. Peart had assisted some students cheerleading.
That's correct. He provided support for our cheerleading team with transportation and so on.
And he had spent about how much money at the time?
I'd provided that report. I don't have it in front of me now.
By the report that you gave us was 8,300 US.
That sounds correct, yes.
And some monies were spent by CMU as part payment back for that money.
That's correct.
For the party for the minister. Yeah? Some 674,930 has the balance that is purportedly owed to him been paid back?
Not at all. He made it a contribution to the university. After the performance of the cheerleading team, after winning their gold medals, he was very impressed, and subsequently 2018 he provided the same service as his sponsorship contribution.
I'm not convinced, Chair, that Mr. Peart himself just wantonly became a partner of the CMU, because the same Mr. Peart is a partner or a director and shareholder of a company that is registered here in Jamaica with Mr. Royal Reed also as a partner and director of that said company. And that company was registered in March of 2016, just 1 month after the general elections. And it is so convenient that Mr. Peart becomes a partner of CMU around the same time as that. And, Mr.
You have that information?
Yes, Chairman.
Phillips,
yes. You want me to name the company? The name of the company, Baltree Investment Company Limited. Here, save yourself that. You always ask for copies.
You give it to
so I ensure that I brought copies.
I will deliver it, Chair.
Certainly quicker. Thank you.
And Chairman, the affair at the CMU is evident has gotten more murkier. It's like a cesspool to be exact. And it's unfortunate, as I've said previously, that the CMU itself built itself into an institution that that is world class. And it's sad to see that even Professor Pinnock himself, who is leading the institution, have seen him gotten himself in this cesspool of just a former minister himself. Yeah, you know. And Chair, I don't know if the PS can say if the Auditor General herself also, the Office of the Auditor General, has gotten all the documents from the CMU itself.
Well, I had my most recent discussion with the officer who is responsible for the audit at CMU this morning, who indicated to me that he's still awaiting additional information from the banks. We met on Monday. We actually spoke to different persons in the banks who expressed some challenges that they were having in terms of the system. I also saw an email that was sent from one particular bank this morning to indicate that they are currently working on the information to be submitted. The officer also sent me a list of other documents based on what was recently provided after our meeting on Monday, so that was yesterday, that he's requesting from the CMU. And I subsequently sent the information to the chairman of council for those documents to be provided. And the professor has mobilized his team and they have started to provide those documents. Based on my discussion with the officer this morning, there may be a possibility that there will be some additional information that will be required, and I've indicated to him that once he provides the information, we will ensure that the documents are provided.
I'm happy to know that it is proceeding. But Prof, did you know of the relationship with both the former minister and Mr. Peart in this?
They are schoolmates. So that's not, but I did not know of the company you just described, and that company has nothing to do with CMU.
Yeah, but you see, I've never been a minister before, but there are certain, even when we come to Parliament here, and it would be interesting too, for parliamentarians who are involved in companies that may do business, don't generally have to, but we generally declare them just in case because of the relationship. Because in this instance, monies are being paid back to this individual. You paid back monies to Mr. Balfour Peart.
I said what was owing to him was donated to the university.
No. Here, you paid a bill purportedly to on behalf of Mr. Peart, which was supposed to do with the party for the former minister. You gave us the documents here.
It's a debt that was owed, sir.
And I'm just describing the messy affair of an individual who is a director of a company with the minister, doing and transactions taking place between being a partner or not. I'm just describing the messy affair that it is, and hoping that in the future that you protect yourself from instances like this. That is it, and that is why I am saying, I said previously, that the board itself, to protect your office, there are certain instances where the board of directors or the council itself should be the one taking decisions and not just the office of the president, because it leaves too much doors open without any accountability in that instance.
All right.
Thank you.
Prof, just looking through this, and I had not really looked at it in depth, this section of this report that you have sent, but it must have raised some flags when the invoices to Gail Campbell that she signed over to Doreen Miller. In February, she signs over 500,000. In March, she signs over $1 million. In April, she signs over $1 million. In May, she signs over 250,000. In June, she sends over 250,000. In August, she sends over 425,000. In September, she sends over 425,000. At some point, someone should have picked up that this is unusual activity to be turning over these sums of money on this consistent basis. There must have some due diligence should have been done at this level. Just looking at it and looking at all the invoices that have come in that way, certainly there is a laxity, but there needs to be tightening of the financial systems, because something like this, just even on cursory examination, would have raised certain suspicions.
Because a question we asked for some information on the party, that the cost of that.
Yes, I saw it here.
Which it's here?
On page. Here we go. Well, if you look in the middle, the responses to this is it here. It will be about how, but it doesn't really have it in chronological order.
Yes, it's on a single page, sir.
I'm not seeing that one. Chairman, you look like you are privileged to have that copy, but I'm not seeing it.
There. Here, let me.
Oh, sorry.
I noticed the cost of the cake went down to 20,000 from the usual $100,000 cakes.
No, it's more than 100,000. 1,000 US. Exchange is 130.
Okay.
130,000.
All right.
So in this, you're saying that the Ministry of Education spent 317,000. There was private funding of 30. That document is?
Yes, sir. That is the document. I just want to also just say two things. One of the things that we tend to do at the ministry is because we have to organize so many meetings and activities, we tend to maximize the use of the facilities from time to time. So I have to say, however, that this would have been what would have been spent on this facility, albeit it may have been used for other purposes. I also want to say that you had mentioned an invitation that was sent out using my name. I would have acted in my position as Chief Education Officer, where I would have been directed by my permanent secretary or minister as it relates to activities that I undertake. So I just wanted to just make that component clear.
Who was your permanent secretary at the time?
Mr. Dean Roy Bernard. I started as permanent secretary on February 14, 2019.
19. Right. And so the whole policy of these events, I'm sure that as permanent secretary now you are...
Well, yes, we started out for the new financial year with new systems and procedures as those relate to procurement and activities. So we have developed a full handbook as it relates to procurement and financial activities to guide the staff. And as we speak, we are training close to 200 of our officers across the island as it relates to procurement as well as it relates to the processing of invoices for payment. So we have seen where there may have been mistakes in the past, because we also have an internal auditor as well as a post-audit compliance officer. So they would have provided feedback on areas relating to the ministry. So we have taken those into consideration, and we now have a new set of systems which we are ensuring that as we go forward, they are not only on paper, but we are complying to the procedures in place.
Mr. Pierre, gentlemen, this relationship that existed that colleague mentioned of. He said you knew nothing of that commercial relationship. The company for which he provided information on.
No, sir, I did not know of the company.
You have a continuing relationship with Mr. Peart at the university?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay. In light of this non-disclosure, what is your modus operandi going forward?
Well, definitely going forward, sir, what we're doing, we are collecting, we're begging. We still reach out to beg.
No, I'm talking
not
about
to pay.
You'll be still begging him?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Like we beg everybody, beg the beggar.
Okay. The degree started, the master's, this was about 2016, 2017?
Somewhere around there, yes, sir.
It's completed now?
I should think maybe if he's not completed, should be completing his final paper.
Okay.
All right, so members, if that's the case, then I would say we could move on to Edna Manley. I don't think we will, if we're finished with CMU, unless you're always welcome to stay, but if you'd like to, if CMU would like to leave, I'm sure, if members have finished the cross-examination. You can stay though if you, or you. All right, absolutely. Yes. Yes, raise some funds. All right, good. All right. Yeah, we had a discussion. We had started the discussion with Edna Manley week before last, was it, or 2 weeks ago? Two Wednesdays ago. So, members, I think we can take it from there. I don't know if there was to be a follow-up statement. I'm not quite certain where we were in the deliberations at that point in time. I think we had a discussion, and that you had indicated that there is a process underway now. Am I correct, PS? That there's a process. Is that
yes,
near
sir.
Conclusion? Where are we?
Okay, well, just to start, sir, the first hearing has been held with there are different complaints, and based on the procedures, it will take
all
some
the
time.
complaints circled on, say, one person, or is it a general issue dealing with more than? Is it one case being dealt with, or is it a general? There are other issues at hand.
There is, and Principal, you can back me up, there is one case that is being dealt with as we speak, but I believe that there are other periphery information.
In other words, there's multiple complaints, but it's surrounding one person.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Good,
yes.
I understand.
So,
Yes.
but I will, again, Edna Manley, sir, as you know, has a scheme of management with a board. And so they submit reports to the ministry accordingly. So they have started the process. I know it's a little difficult to speak about while we are going through the process, but I believe there were some other questions that were being asked when we were here the last time that
Yes.
perhaps Madam Principal want to take up on.
Yes, and members, let me reiterate for those that may have concerns, such as Member Campbell, that ours is not to deal with the instant case, which has certainly private ramifications that must be dealt with in the appropriate manner. Ours is to sort of get information in a way that we can make policy recommendations and determine whether we feel that the procedures have been properly followed. So we don't need to go into the specific details of each and every incident. So over to the principal. Welcome. Yes. I think the PS was indicating you were going to.
Well, Chairman, I believe, sir, she spoke, and there were some questions
all right.
that were
Yes.
being asked at the time, which
Oh,
you
and we
had
had to-
said members would do a follow-up just to make sure the issue is fully ventilated.
All right, so members, I open the floor. If there are any questions of Edna Manley at this point in time.
I just have some general comments regarding accounting. Okay, the procurement of services and goods at the college. How are they done?
We have a, good morning, good afternoon, sir. We have a procurement committee, and so depending on the cost, and we have a procurement manager, so depending on the cost of the goods or the service, it goes to procurement manager first, and then to the procurement committee, and accordingly.
No, what's the method of procurement? You just mentioned the staffing that does it, but what is the method of procurement?
It varies,
Is it
sir.
tender? What you adhere to the government's procurement guidelines?
Yes, sir. We do adhere to the government procurement guidelines.
Okay. So if that is audited, it can be substantiated.
Yes, sir.
Are your accounts up to date?
In terms of audits, no,
Yes.
sir. We're behind with our audits, but we have an audit company that is doing that right now.
How far back are you?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. When is the projected time for bringing them up to date?
Well, we had actually projected this year March, but we fell behind because we lost staff. So we have our complement now, we're only out one. So we should become up to date by the end of this year with all of the backlog of audits.
I've heard that you have frequent instances of late payments to staff. Is that so? No. I know that to be fact. I'm posing it.
I know.
In other words, are your payments made on time?
To staff?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And suppliers?
Suppliers may not be as we would like because we have had an issue with staffing. But in terms of our staff, our staff are paid on time. Our issue for this month and the month before would have been the challenges with NCB. But outside of that, normal on time. But our suppliers, because we had been short staffed for a period of time, and that posed a bit of more than a bit, challenge for the finance department. But we have hired, we have cleaned house, and we have projected a change in how we do business.
So that is generally smooth, by and large, that's what you're saying.
By and large, we have challenges, but as I said, they came about because of lack of staffing.
I want to go a little bit shift from the accounting to general administration. And it carries over from the one for which there was much discussion last week. All grievances and complaints generally by staff members are dealt with, both academic staff and support staff.
Grievances are dealt with through the HR department.
Yeah, Madam Principal, to tell me that is what is expected. That's where it goes, HR.
Sorry about that. I'm new to the system of the conversation. Sorry, sir. Depending on the grievance, and so the process would be persons put it in writing, and it's put through a process. We have a HR committee that will ventilate the issue, and from there the findings are reported, it is escalated to the principal with recommendations, and we go from there. So,
are those done in an expeditious way?
Yes,
because
they are, sir.
I tell you, I have gotten a few complaints that has come to my ear. I can't substantiate them, so I'm not gonna say that they are so. And one of my duties as an MP is to listen to people complain. And you're head of a public institution that is accountable ultimately to the Parliament. Is that grievances are not dealt with in a confidential way, right? I'm positive them. I say I'm not trying any case. They are not dealt with in a confidential way. They are not resolved in an expeditious way. And as a result, the aggrieved parties subject to whatever the issues are for some prolonged period. Has there been any review of the processes that grievances are dealt with by persons engaged
Yes.
to the college?
Yes. We have, over the past few months and since the situation came up before it came to press, we had started looking at our policies and how we have been dealing with issues generally, creating new policies where we had none, and encouraging persons to be proactive when there's a complaint, to put it in writing and put it through the proper channels. Sometimes that is the part that is missing, where persons may find that there's a challenge and may not want to put it in writing so that it can go through the proper process, but they would say it to somebody else and not necessarily go through the process that we have right now to deal with those things. But we have been working we have formed committees to look at, we have had conversations with the various levels of our teams so that we are able to get the voices in terms of the processes and how the processes that we currently have, how we can improve those.
And the board is the body that makes carries out the ongoing oversight function
Yes.
of the
Yes,
administration.
Sir. Yes, sir.
How would you consider that board a proactive board?
I remember that's not, I don't know if that is a fair
I'll
question.
withdraw that. My intention, quite frankly, and you're correct, Chairman. But just to share with you, I've served on boards, many boards before, and many institutions. The boards are there, but the administration just do their own thing anyway. So when I asked the question, the board was proactive. It was a context, but you're correct. It would not be maybe appropriate to ask you, but it's where my mind was going in terms of what I wanted to get a sense of.
You tried your best, sir.
Yes. Because really what I want to, Chairman, is, you see, and it comes back from last week, many public institutions sometimes are run like a private cabal, and persons employed in those institutions feel powerless because those within that whole organization,
power structure,
exactly, denies them, and that ought not to be. These institutions belong to the people, and everybody engaged in there must have a sense of fair play.
True.
As I said, it's not a private institution, it's a public institution. And one of the differentiating essence of public institution is that it belongs to everybody. It doesn't belong to those who are in control for the period that they are there. And that's really where my concern was, Chairman, and I really wanted to go. That we have to be conscious of this all the time. We must ensure that fair play exists for everybody in the institution. After all, it's a collective task to fulfill the mission of the organization, and they must feel that they are being fairly treated and they have a useful role to play.
Just a question. The tribunal is meeting now. How long do you anticipate this process to take? Is it something you're hoping to finish in a week, or 2 weeks, a month?
Right.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. I believe the personnel committee meets this week with their findings and will make recommendations to the board. They'll call an emergency board meeting soon after, and then after that, the recommendations and the findings will be submitted to the minister.
Okay, so basically it's just and this is this is how the process is supposed to.
Yes, sir.
So when someone at the institution feels aggrieved for whatever reason, you're indicating they would go to somebody, whether it should be the principal, a counselor, who would they go to as a student? Who would they go to and indicate that they have a concern or a problem? Is there a sort of a standard procedure for that?
For students,
Yeah.
students first will go to their advisor.
Or a student or even a junior teacher, a teacher who also feels. So where would these complaints go normally?
Okay, for students will go first to their advisor or their dean of school. That's their immediate administration. And then that is taken through to the vice principal of academic affairs. For faculty or staff, their concerns will go through either their union if they want to choose to use that route, or through to the HR in writing to say that they have been grieved in some way.
And then when they come with that, the first thing you do is say...
I don't get it first.
Sorry, the institution.
Right.
The first thing that the dean or the HR department, whoever it would be put this in writing.
Yes, sir.
Then what happens?
Then after putting it in writing, depending on the severity of the situation, HR may call in someone to mediate or ask for the HR committee to be formed to deal with the matter, or a disciplinary committee to deal with the matter.
But at what point is this elevated to the principal, to the board? When do you become aware of these issues?
I become aware of an issue after it has gone through the first rung of if the HR is dealing with it as a HR matter. At the end of the committee will meet, they will deliberate, the hearing will happen depending on what it's about.
But if a disciplinary committee is called, that would be after you're informed.
No, I'm not informed.
So you wouldn't know that disciplinary committee meetings are taking place?
In that regard, in a general way, sir, yes.
In a general way, but
right,
not
but
formally.
I wouldn't be expected to have the various parts of the conversation until afterwards. Then I'll receive all the findings and the recommendation in writing, and I will use our procedures manual to look at that.
So your tribunal now would be focused on two things. Number one, whether whether wrongs were committed. Let's just leave it at that. Wrongs were committed. But secondly, whether the procedures were followed.
Escalated, right.
And I think thirdly, what would be useful to us is whether, if they were followed, whether they're sufficient. I think an important part that is coming out to me, I think what we have, a lot of the discussion we had before you came into the chamber today, is the fact that we must come out of this process better than we went in.
Very true.
This issue that is being raised is not specific to Edna Manley. It is happening in many institutions every day. So quite frankly, there's a whole raft of persons across this country, especially young women in different positions, who are listening attentively because they feel they have been at the mercy of this from time to time. So these deliberations can't just be about this case. It has to be about how we're going to make the procedure stronger, how we're going to ensure that there's, number one, there's a protection for people who come forward, that there's justice for them, that they get a fair hearing, because if they feel that the cards are stacked against them, people are not going to come forward, and this will not be resolved.
True.
So I think that I answer those questions because we want to be certain that at the end of the day, yes, we are going to need some form of report that says to us, this is what we found, and this is how we move forward. The issues of discipline or not for those involved are internal matters and ones which will follow through different areas.
Right, sir.
But with regard to the procedures and what I'm picking up even from the deliberations with my colleagues on both sides, that there's a feeling that we could have been we could have moved with more alacrity with regards to the the cases, and that we have to find a way, the complaints, and there must be a way that we can ensure in the future that this is the case.
And sir, what we have done, is to formulate an opportunities committee just to look at that and look at our process.
What?
Opportunities, because we realize that this has hit us off our center in so many ways. And to ensure that that protection that you just spoke about happens, we have formed a committee and we have entitled it Opportunities Committee, where we have various members of our college community as part of this committee to look at not just strengthening our sexual harassment policy, but also to look at all our policies to see how we can transform our institution in terms of the voice of and equity across the board for all our members. So we are doing that and provide that with you.
No, hold on, no. Member Campbell has been patient.
Thank you.
Patient.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. DeGrasse, is your HR committee a separate committee from the disciplinary committee, which is set up by the board?
The board has a personnel, it's the personnel committee.
All right, that's what I'm trying to say. So the HR committee deals with staff?
Yes.
Staff issues?
Staff issues depending on the level of the issue.
Right. But when you have a complaint against one student against another, or a student against a member of staff, that is referred to the board.
It depends on the issue. It depends on the issue that the student would bring against a student. The board gets a report at the end, but it depends on the issue. For example, go ahead.
All right, I'm just trying to work through this. Take, for instance, the complaint which you had or one of the complaints you had in 2017. The student comes in and says, I'm being harassed by Mr. X. And in that particular case, you took a statement, or when I say you, I mean the institution took a statement. How is that elevated to the board? Who is the representative that takes that complaint to the board, which puts the board in a position to trigger the mechanism at the board level, where it appoints this personnel, whatever committee you call it, which is going to deal, to hear the evidence from the complaint, from the person complaining against the person who is alleged to have committed to the act, the wrongful act?
Okay, a student did not complain to me in 2017. I just want to make that clear. However, did not.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
A student did not complain to me in 2017. A student did not. However, when a complaint comes to me, usually I don't have complaints coming to me directly. For example, why we end up doing what we're doing right now, which is the investigation into the hearing, it's because a student came forward. The student was encouraged to put it in writing. It was submitted to the board immediately. The board called an emergency meeting and formalized a personnel committee. The personnel committee investigates, takes that information back to the board, the findings and the recommendation, and then that is then sent to the ministry and the teacher is alerted.
All right, one second. I'm still trying to, you have to pardon my ignorance of, and this is what I'm trying to establish. As these documents I have before me suggest that you admitted that in 2017...
Lecturer.
I'm sorry?
Lecturer.
A lecturer filed a complaint.
Yes.
And you did say that there were several complaints. One was reduced into writing. And it is you who made a determination that there was insufficient evidence to proceed with the matter. So you investigated the matter, you acted as the jury in that matter as to the truthfulness of the statement which is before you, and you made a determination as the judge that this wasn't worth it to escalate it to the board level. If that is not a correct interpretation of what you gave us, you can let me know, because I intend to go further. Is what I just laid out a correct position as to what transpired in 2017?
No, sir, because there would be...
No, Member Campbell, let the principal. I heed your warning that we're not in court. So, no, absolutely.
We are not in court.
No, absolutely. So,
but we are trying
to get at the truth. I'm with you 100%, but allow her to. Yes. Sorry, Dr. DeGrasse Johnson, you are.
Hi, thank you for your question. I was not judge and jury in 2017. I did not receive, at the time when I spoke with the lecturer, any written complaints.
All right, let me just abandon the course, the route I was walking. I'll walk a different route. I'd asked you earlier, how do I get my complaint escalated to the board level? I have been abused. I want to know, in that upward trajectory, how do I move from A to that board level? How do I get there? Who takes it? Who is the representative that takes it from, and that chain of custody of that information which is received at point A, and we're moving along? Tell me, it moves to B, it then moves to C, and ultimately it is going to be taken, I take it, by a member of staff in whatever capacity it may be, you, who is a representative on the board. Tell me how it gets there, because the information which has been put before this committee is that there was a complaint which was reduced. One complaint. There were other complaints in 2017. So I want to know how that moved from the receipt of the complaint to the board. How does it get there? Because as I understand it, the disciplinary unit within the board has to be triggered. So I really want to know how it happens at your institution.
Sir, I outlined that already in terms of report is given, it is submitted to the board, and then the board.
To whom?
The report is given to whomever. It's submitted to the board.
To whomever.
To whomever. For the submission that we're dealing with now, it was submitted through the dean of the School of Visual Arts.
Let's just deal with the hypothetical. I don't want to get into the specifics of the matter which is before the board now. I just don't want to run that into that error at all. Just give us the generic thing. I come to, in whichever year I come, and I say I've been abused, how does it move? And that's all I want now. How does it move from the person who receives it to the board? How does it get there?
It moves when a letter is written to the board. You receive the complaint in writing, then you move it to the board.
In the setup that you have, the organizational framework that you have set up, when I come in as a student, as a first-year student, I'm I'm given a handbook which tells me that this is how my complaints will be handled, right?
Yes, sir.
Perhaps you could tell me, using, insofar as you can, what is set out in the handbook to guide a Miss X who has a complaint. What does it say? It moves from where to where to where, so that that good student knows what to do in the event that he or she has a complaint.
There's a report that is made, and the request is moved to either the dean, the advisor, the dean. There's an engagement of an informal discussion. And if we need to engage a counselor, we do that. It then is escalated to the VP of administration, who documents and passes the complaint on. And then, depending on the nature of the issue, in short order, a committee member will, various things. No, there are two different things here. Sorry about that. The complaint is formalized. Then it's submitted to the dean, who then submits it to the board. The dean or any relevant individual submit it to the board, and then the board will act.
Give yourself a fighting chance. Wear an approved helmet. A message from the Road Safety Unit in the Ministry of Transport and Mining.
I am Jamaican.
I am an infantry soldier.
I am JD Freeway.
I am.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt us. Sad to say, more than 80% of our nation's people are affected by words. Think before you speak. Educate yourself.
What can a little germs do?
Pink eye running belly, even flu. Germs can make them happen to you.
Put germs on our manners with these. Cover your mouth when you cough and sneeze. Always wash your hand with water and soap. Keep dirty hands from your eyes and your nose and your mouth. You don't want to be sick, take care. Practice every day, no germs around here.
A message from the Ministry of Health.
My mother tells me that when I was a teenager, she noticed a dip in my mood every year around the time of exams in school. In my second year of university, I experienced a number of challenging events that led to my very first panic attack. And in my fourth year, I went through the darkest period of my life where I isolated myself from my family and my friends, and I struggled to complete my degree. And I was diagnosed as clinically depressed with anxiety and given prescription medication.
While you need a doctor or a psychiatrist to diagnose a mental disorder, there are signs and symptoms that as individuals you can look for. You can refer them to the community mental health team for assistance.
If you or someone you love is suffering from a mental illness, it's okay to ask for help. And always remember, mental health matters.
Forests cover about 30% of the world's land area and are home to more than half of the world's 10 million species of plants and animals. They play a vital role in the water cycle, and more than 1/6 of the people on the planet depend directly on forests for their livelihoods. Since centuries, the forests and highlands of Asia have been the home of indigenous communities. There are hundreds of ethnic groups, each with its own distinct culture and way of life. In this enormous diversity, they have one thing in common. Their livelihood depends on land and natural resources. It is now well established that our climate is changing due to global warming. But people are not equally affected by climate change. Climate change has a more immediate and serious impact on indigenous communities because of their dependence on nature. Ever since they noticed that the climate is changing, indigenous communities have voiced their concerns, and they are contributing to finding solutions to the problem the world is facing today.
แต่ก่อนนี้จะหนาวจะเย็นมันพอดีบ่เย็นเมื่อก่อนนี้หนาว3 เดือนแต่ว่าตอนนี้ช่วงประมาณสัก2 เดือนครึ่งไม่ถึง3 เดือนก็ร้อนขึ้นละโชคกินโชคโคกนี่เรื่องป่าอาหารนี่เทียนไปหน่อยแต่ก่อนนี้แม่ซากตำมื้อนี้บ่เคยมีล่ะหมูปีมันมีแบบนี้พอดีมันมาปลูกดอกแล้วจกใส่ก็ย่ำบ่ออกช่วงนี้นี่ต้นไม้อายุสั้นขึ้นก็มีหน่วยบักกาแล้วก็มีขนุนที่อายุสั้นขึ้นแล้วก็มีต้นอ้อยแมลงเพิ่มขึ้นก็มียุงเวลาลงนาทุกปีเนี่ยต้องลงเดือนพฤษภา
วันที่10 พฤษภานี้เราต้องลงแล้วแต่ว่าช่วงปัจจุบันนี้ไม่ได้แล้วเพราะว่าน้ำมันไม่มี
Your tone is totally different from what you said 10 minutes ago. I listened carefully to you, and that is what shocked me. And I was amazed that when you were asked by my colleague, how does this thing get escalated to the board? A manual was passed to you and you were reading and chipping through as to how it is. And I said, I am amazed because your comment was it couldn't come to you directly. And I'm not hearing wrong. And the other thing is that the way you answered my colleague reading from a manual, my impression is that if I'm assaulted on the campus as a young student, I couldn't run into your office. So you're saying that now is totally different, I'm saying, from what you said and the impression they given. And I'm not, I mean, I'm very open, and that's what struck me terribly. One, that you said it couldn't come directly to you, and two, you were reading from a manual that was passed to you to answer that question. And it tells me, therefore, that really and truly you're at the head of the stream. You're at the head of the stream, and therefore I am now not surprised as a parliamentarian that the student would want to come and talk, because obviously they don't feel that they had an open policy and couldn't reach out to you for help.
One second. I'd interrupted Member Campbell.
Okay. Chairman, I will, I've made my notes in relation to that when we're making the recommendations as to what ought to happen.
Yes, and I would say to you, though, that the tribunal is meeting, and I think what would be useful is as soon as they finish, which is why I asked the time frame. I don't know if I got an answer to that. Is it that we expect by the end of July for that to be completed?
Yes, sir.
If that's the case, I suggest that for our report,
very well, sir.
we could get, no, I'm just saying, I'm not that we can't give recommendations now, but I'm suggesting that we get the report from the tribunal as well, which should encapsulate some recommendations, but that it is something I think this committee could have a little discussion, because it's a very important issue and we're going to have to make some serious recommendations.
I want to shift the focus slightly, Chairman. Dr. DeGrasse,
The clarification, because I really struck my point by my colleague from Trelawney. Just want to, if a student is alleged being harassed, the process is directed to the board and not to you first. Just want to clarify that. Madam Principal.
Could you repeat your question, please, sir?
If student A being harassed by a faculty member or an administrative staff and wants to make a complaint, the first point of stop of making that complaint is to the board.
No, sir.
Just want to clarify, it's not to the board at
No,
the
sir.
first.
No,
It's the
sir.
internal process.
It's an internal process.
Do they can they come to you at any time in that internal process?
A student, yes, sir.
They can come before the internal process or after the internal process, before it reaches the board.
A student can come to me at any time, sir.
Has any ever come to you?
About harassment, no, sir.
Okay. How long now have you been principal?
Since 2012, sir.
2012?
Yes, sir.
7 years. Okay.
Member Campbell, I think we're members is 5-1, so
yeah, I'll try and be.
I'm letting Member Campbell.
Dr. DeGrasse,
the night watchman.
Earlier, if I'm correct, I heard you say that you are behind in terms of the audited reports by 3 years. Which 3 years are those?
2016, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18.
So it's 15, 16, 17.
16, 17, 17, 18. And 18, 19 becomes due as at end of July.
Are you sure you don't have 14, 15 outstanding too?
No, we don't have 14, 15 outstanding. That has been completed.
That's completed.
Yes, sir.
Is the post of the Director of Finance presently filled?
Yes, sir.
And can you say how many staff members are presently, full-time staff members, are in the unit headed by the Director of Finance?
Director. We have 12 positions that are filled.
12 positions?
Yes, sir.
How many of them are permanent positions?
I think 11. Yeah, 11. One ministry's person.
When were they filled?
Many of them were filled this year.
This year?
March of this year. Starting March and April of this year.
Why did they remain vacant?
Why were they? Why
did they remain vacant?
Because we would have engaged very well. When someone leaves, depending on how long they were there, we would have to write to the Ministry of Finance for permission to hire, and then we would have advertised and go through that process.
Yeah,
so forth.
I take all of that.
But I can't answer any more than that.
How many positions do you have on the establishment?
12.
12. And let us, because you spoke about staff issues you were having, because I find it a little bit distressing that I'm required to file declarations with the Integrity Commission, and I must do so by the end of March each year. And if I slip 1 year, I'm reprimanded. But you you receive government subvention.
Yes, sir.
And you're under the law, you're required to have these submitted and finalized each year.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And your position as it stands now, you have 3 years in arrears audited. So you can't say what your true financial position is in July of 2019, because you have the position you ought to be in, the true position you're supposed to be in at 2015 can't be carried over to 16, nor can 16 be carried over to 17, nor 17 into 18, because these things are not audited. And this is partly because the staff, you didn't have the staff in place.
That's partly.
Partly. And part is due, the other part is to what? Due to what?
A few years ago, we started a process for an external auditor. That process had to be stopped and restarted because I can't remember right now all the details, but that delayed us for a little bit, and then when we picked up, we were short-staffed.
Is your audit done by the Auditor General, or you do it in-house?
Repeat that, sir.
Is your audit done by the Auditor General, or is it done by an auditor that is...
An external audit company.
So that is someone that you bring in and pay?
Yes, sir.
To do it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm following, because
Yeah.
if that's the case, then it should be done in a little more timely manner, because it is being contracted. We have had some difficulties with the Auditor General because of the overload and the short staff. But if you have the funding to do it privately,
Right.
then there should be no reason. I mean, even if you're a year behind or two, we could, maybe turn a blind eye, but it seems like it's more than that.
Staffing. It was staffing, sir. Competent staffing and staffing, generally.
So there is an issue with finding competent accounting staff.
Before, yes, sir.
Are you satisfied that what you have in place now is at the level at which it ought to be, so that you can then deal with the arrears?
Yes, sir.
Would it surprise you to find that your members of your staff do not have the minimum qualification to members of your financial staff, do not have the minimum qualifications required to occupy the positions they presently have?
That would surprise me, sir.
It would surprise you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, what I'd like you to do is to give us a copy of your latest assessment, the evaluation of the staff that you have in the finance department. You would have done an evaluation at the end of the annual. You do these things yearly.
The performance appraisal?
Yes. You do that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Perhaps you could let us have a copy of the evaluation which was done in relation to those staff members who are presently there. Right. Yes. Additionally,
line of question too, regarding the accounting staff. He has asked for the appraisal report of those members. I would like also accompanying that report is their respective qualifications vis-a-vis the qualifications required for those posts.
Dr. DeGrasse, additionally, would you be able to provide us with an explanation as to, for the significant sums which are paid out? The last numbers I saw was close to $4 million for supper and associated expenses for persons in that department.
In what department?
In
finance.
The finance department.
That's $4 million for what period of time?
One financial year, one year.
It's a lot of support.
Overtime, sir, for the persons who were there.
They have to work overtime.
Yes, because we are short-staffed. Some staff had to work overtime.
Not to cut you, but how many members of staff are there in that department?
Now?
Yeah.
11.
Okay.
Sorry. You had 11 staff members.
No, we have 11 now.
You have?
11 now. Well, 12 for the director, but 11.
Right. But for the last financial year, 17-18, you spent close to $4 million on the numbers seem to suggest that it is for supper.
Supper and taxi.
Supper and taxi.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, how many staff members were of the 12 on the establishment?
Can't answer that off the top of my head, sir.
Right. Give it that you. Of the What is the finance cost for your operation for any given year?
Say it again, sir.
What's the finance cost for your institution in any given year?
Budget.
Oh, what's my budget? For which budget, the subvention or the AIA?
All right, let me put that differently. How much does it cost to run your institution? I don't care who pays for it. How much does it cost to finance the operation of the Edna Manley College of Arts?
It's over 900 million, sir, with recurring and capital.
$900 million. And how much of that do you receive by way of subvention from the Ministry of Education?
Approximately 64%.
And how do you know how the balance is financed?
Through fees.
And what is the average cost of a student attending Edna Manley?
Your tuition or the cost for training a student?
Or training of each student?
About 850,000, somewhere around there, over 800,000.
Is there an explanation for you are running a continuous deficit?
Sir, I'm not understanding.
All right. Your institution, you say costs about $900 million per year.
Mm-hmm.
You get 64% of that from the state.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between the two figures has to be financed.
40%.
36 or thereabouts, yeah. You said, and that essentially comes by way of fees.
Fees and miscellaneous. We do rental of the space as well.
Right. But your most recent records indicate that I saw somewhere, I think it was for 17-18, where you're running a deficit of $45 million.
I don't have that on my thing.
I remember, Campbell, while we're waiting on the answer, you're almost...
Yes, I'm...
Yeah.
Oh, I can. Sir, I would like my Director of Finance to respond to that.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
I would like my Director of Finance to respond to that, please.
Go ahead. You can identify yourself for the Hansard.
Okay.
Come on.
Yes.
Okay, you can turn on yours now.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Carleen Colville, Director of Finance and Accounts. As it relates to the deficit over the past 5 years, a large part of that is as it relates to the repairs and maintenance of the infrastructure of the college. The infrastructure is old. We are not funded for capital through the ministry, and so we fund repairs, we finance repairs and maintenance from our from fees. Of course, this would not have been supported in the budget that we receive. So it usually pushes us in a deficit position. Whatever excess cash flow we have is utilized to cover these expenditures and is reported as such.
What's the state of your receivables?
Sorry?
What's the state of your receivables?
The state of our receivables currently is that's under control. We,
72 million?
We, however, have a large portion of that, at least
Those are the fees,
60%
unpaid
of
fees.
that is over 360 days, which we have actually presented to the board for write-off.
That's unpaid fees
That's
or
unpaid
late
fees.
fees?
But those are coming back from...
Fees and accommodation.
Sorry?
Fees and accommodation.
Hall of residence, yes.
Yeah, what portion of it is for fees?
At least 70% of the outstanding amount is for fees.
What policy do you pursue when you have, because I know other institutions take a certain course, and I'm not suggesting you take that course, but what do you do in order to bring the level of receivables down?
We, the current receivables, we have implemented policies in terms of or monitoring, the way we monitor students now, the way we communicate with students and manage their accounts. So we have strict procedures in place as it relates to collections. Persons are not allowed to actually, well, let's go with the initiative first. What we do is to offer a payment plan. We have persons registered on the system, and we monitor in terms of when they do exams. So we ensure that payments are made before they're allowed to sit exams, and we have seen improvements for the current state of affairs. For the periods in excess of 5 years, which has the bulk of the receivables, for those we have reconciled and have referred to the board for write-offs. In the meantime, the initiative is to forward these to a debt collection agency so that they can assist us in at least recovering those.
And Chairman, since I have the Director of Finance, I didn't know that. May I just ask, what's the work environment like in your unit?
We have had a high staff turnover. One of the reasons is because we're competing against private sector resources. Our salary scale is government, and so it is, if I have a staff member who she's an accountant and she's working well, the private sector can pull her away because she's doing the same thing and possibly at a lower rate, at least $2 million less than what she'll be earning while working with the college. And so we lose the staff as a result of this. So that's one reason. Because we were so short-staffed, we had a few dedicated staff who worked together. However, what we've seen is persons would have been burnt out over the years. However, we have, for the new crop of staff who are now in, we're working on initiatives to ensure that we keep the morale high and we motivate as we go along so that they can stay. As it relates to the finances or the salaries, we can't compete with that. And so, as I said before, we lose a lot because of that.
Have you asked the Ministry of Finance to reclassify them?
We went through a reclassification 2016. However, we found that we possibly need to revisit because we're still challenged by that. We'll send out the adverts. However, the type of candidates that we attract is not adequate to support what we now have in place.
All right. Just one thing that you said, and members, we had a discussion, and the report is going for the universities. Just one question I'd ask the principal and maybe the permanent secretary. We have heard this discussion that if persons haven't paid the fees up to a certain point, they're not allowed to take the exam. You just mentioned again that this was the case. Am I correct?
Yes, what we do is we prompt them to come in, so they still sign some form of commitment. We do allow them to sit the exams. However, we force them to come in and at least make some minimum payment. We want to.
And yes, but so you're saying that no one is prevented from doing exams
No, they're
at
not
no
prevented,
stage?
but we make further arrangements with them. But what we don't want to do is to just
No,
have it
well,
open.
that's what I was really asking.
Right.
Because it's my feeling that is such a waste. In other words, if somebody reaches the stage of an exam, even if they have great financial stress, they're unable to pay, let them sit the exam. If you even withhold the results or some other mechanism, don't let them have to do over the whole year for that. That's certainly my feeling. But all right, members, we're over our time. I'd like to thank the Ministry of Education and the Manley CMU for having come today. Members, just for us to clarify, I want to go through this. Next week, we have briefly, we have both RADA and NWA having their roads, the list of roads that were for this financial year. We'd ask them to send us a list. I've only seen the list. The list has come in from both. The members, we can look at it, but we're going to have a brief look at those roads. We have also agreed that we're going to have an in-camera submission, so it's a busy week. Plus, we have the Ministry of Labor. Now, there was an issue outstanding with the Ministry of Labor with regard to the security guards. Certainly we need that report. And secondly, we were going to look at the issue of the Melia Hotel, the social intervention program, but we're just going to tidy up and finish off the Ministry of Labor and deal with that. And then the following week on the agenda, we have local government was to start those deliberations, which would take us to the end. However, members, there are a number of issues that we have spoken about that we have not put on the agenda. I just want to name them. Number one, about a month ago, I'd made the point that I am very concerned that we have a number of investigations that have gone out. We have the investigations that went to the Contractor General about the bushing, the used car issue that's out there, Petrojam, education, Nestle, money in the trunk of cars. There's a whole series of things. And yes, but the point I'm making is this. No, but I mean, we do these things, but what concerns me is the fact that you have an integrity commission that has been so empowered. You have MOCA, fraud squad. Each time these investigations or these matters come up, they go for investigation, and 2-3 years later, you're not hearing anything. And I'm not certain if this is, if there are some reasons, it's a lack of resources, something, but I'd indicated that this, as far as I'm concerned, cannot continue. It gives a lack of trust. The persons looking on are not afraid of the law because they think the law never reaches a conclusion. Therefore, I believe that we would be derelict in our duty if we do not invite them to the committee to indicate whether or not they're comfortable that they are performing at optimum or if there's some problem that exists. And I say that having read comments made by a member of the Integrity Commission where it's also a concern. Therefore, I believe that that is a matter that we must bring before the committee. Secondly, we had indicated that the issue of inefficiency is just one of the things we found with just getting a TCC and the amount of time. So we had indicated we would just bring in the entire body. We'd ask for a report, is that correct, first? And we need to receive that and bring them before the committee. These are things that can be done in an hour, but the inefficiencies of government slow down everything. I was at a function today for the PSOJ, and just talking about the speed of getting things done. Too much red tape in some areas, and our job is to look at efficiency, so we have to deal with some of those things. There are some questions that I want to ask. I won't belabor the members, but I'll tell the clerk just with regard to TPD and otherwise. They're not difficult, but they're issues that were from before. So I'll put those to the clerk. But what I'm going to suggest is that I'm going to ask that next week we put the agenda so that we can keep it in a timely manner, members, because over the next 3 weeks we're going to have a packed agenda if we're going to tackle some of these things, and we just have to keep it tight and try and fit them in.
This house goes on an summer break at the end of this month, eh?
Yeah, which is why I'm making this point.
I just thought I'd remind you.
Well, you know, if you want, we could defer the break and spend a few more weeks. But at your urging, I'm sure the other members would appreciate it and show you the appreciation when we're leaving here later. But members, so I'll work with the clerk, and if I may, and send it out to members so that from next week and the following week we can keep it tight and see if we can finish off at least this segment before. I don't know if there's anything I've left off of important pending matters.
Well, two things. I'll crave your indulgence. As one item I wanted to raise with Edna Manley is the question of the physical facility and the level, what level of, trying to see what
no, given the time, I don't want to
I didn't want to, because they're going to leave, they're not going to come back for now.
Yeah, so your question is something that you can get a report for?
Yes. The level of disrepair. I see pictures of many of your structures there in terrible state of disrepair.
And they did mention that a lot of the problems is repairs. But let's not...
And the program of action.
I don't want us to reopen. I've already thanked them. I don't want to be an Indian giver.
You would not.
Could you just give us a short report on the state of your infrastructure and what we're doing to deal with it? Yes, I'm sure you have that in-house.
And the other thing pertinent to what you asked, Chairman, is I would love if we could, at this meeting, set a time for those investigative bodies that are way behind to come and tell us what are their impediments, challenges.
We are to meet. We start local government next week. We're doing it for 2 weeks. But what the earliest we can do, we have to give them 2 weeks. So what I would say is let's aim for the last sitting, and next week we can determine. But let us get the notices out for the last sitting of this, of July, which would be just before we're going to the summer recess. All right, so members, with that, thank you. Again, thank you for all who participated. Meeting is now adjourned.